So thanks again to the Revolutionary Students Union for having me. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. I understand that there's a tradition of giving a history presentation and a theory presentation, kind of dividing things up into that framework, so I'm going to do that. First, I'm going to talk about the history of Freedom Road, and it's going to focus mostly on more recent stuff. And then I want to talk about the theory of Freedom Road and what that's all about. So first, who we are. Freedom Road Socialist Organization was founded 25 years ago this year, 1985, from the merger of two groups from the new communist movement, which was an anti-revisionist Marxist-Leninist movement that arose in the 70s. Those two groups were the Proletarian Unity League and the Revolutionary Workers' Headquarters. A little later, another group called the Organization for Revolutionary Unity joined, and then in 1994, a group called the Socialist Organizing Network joined, which itself was a regroupment from one of the largest groups from the 80s, the League of Revolutionary Struggle. So, our basic strategy, I'll talk about this more in the theory section, is to build a united front against monopoly capitalism. And the core of that united front is a strategic alliance between the multinational working class and the movements of oppressed nationalities. And the strategic alliance and the united front as a whole has to be led by the working class and its party. So based on that, we've done a lot of mass work, and we're an organization that's known for doing heavy mass work based on the mass line. So through the 80s and 90s, most of our work was union organizing. We also did a significant amount of Central American solidarity stuff around El Salvador and Nicaragua, and supporting the movements of the Sandinistas and FMLN. So we also had a big impact in the student movement, which had been in decline for a while, through a group called the Progressive Student Network. Likewise, we did electoral work around the Harold Washington campaign, Chicago mayoral campaign, and the Jesse Jackson presidential campaign, and both of these in the interest of building the Black liberation movement. So that's a picture of some of the mass work that we did in that period. In 1999, our organization suffered a split. A group of right opportunists left our organization after a 10-year-long two-line struggle. It began in 1989, ran until 1999, and this rightist group was part of a general rightward trend of the international communist movement following the collapse of the Soviet Union. So a lot of groups around the country became demoralized and started saying, well, what happened in the Soviet Union? Well, I guess we need to ditch Marxism-Leninism and try to explore something new. And that was their approach. And they took a social democratic view that they call Left Free Foundation. The Marxist-Leninists, the communists in Freedom Road, held on to three pillars of Marxism-Leninism that allowed us to weather these changes that were taking place. One was a paper, an internal struggle paper that was written by Comrade Mick Kelly in 1989 called Continuing the Revolution is Not a Dinner Party. And it was about Tiananmen Square. So that was one thing. Two, the Workers' Party of Belgium, we connected with them, who were taking a good approach, and they wrote a paper called Balance of the Collapse of the Soviet Union that drew the conclusion that revisionism, a turn away from Marxism in words, but reformism in deeds, or an idea of revising the basic principles of Marxism, had infected the Soviet Union following 1956, and then the Soviet Union degenerated for a period of 30 plus years after that collapsed in 1991. The third pillar was the Communist Party of the Philippines wrote a paper called Reaffirm Our Basic Principles and Carry the Revolution Forward. So, right after this happened, they were clear and said, look, whatever you think, the collapse of the Soviet Union isn't a failure of Marxism-Leninism. It just shows that revisionism doesn't work. What collapsed in the Soviet Union was the slow restoration of capitalism following the institution of revisionism by Khrushchev. So they were clear, and it helped rally others. So then, based around that, and then the Workers' Party of Belgium wrote or put together a seminar to sum up the collapse of the Soviet Union that meets annually now, called the International Communist Seminar. And in 1999, the seminar adopted a resolution called the 1999 Declaration that kind of goes into summing up the whole history of the International Communist Seminar, or the International Communist Movement. And this became a basis for rectification and reaffirming Marxism-Leninism in our organization, and it was a big part of what kept us on the right path. So, like I said, we're a group known for doing serious mass organizing based on the mass line, and I'll talk more about the mass line and what that means when I talk about theory. But it should be said that in all our mass work, we have three strategic objectives. One, we want to win all that can be won for the people and harm the enemy. Two, we want to raise the level of consciousness, organization, and struggle of the mass organizations that we work in. And three, we want to win the advanced fighters to Marxism-Leninism and build organization for revolution. So our view is that mass work has to accomplish all three of those things simultaneously for it to be revolutionary and valuable to us. So what do we do these days? We work in trade unions. We have concentrations in AFSCME, SEIU, UE, United Electric, and the Teamsters. We base that on a theory of class struggle unionism, which I'll talk about later.
Sorry.
That's quite a wonderful this is a base.
Yeah, I rated the student lounge thing, whatever that was.
Okay, so additionally, we do urban poor organizing. That is, we do welfare rights organizing in low-income communities, and we work to stop housing foreclosures. So, for example, we helped lead a struggle of a woman named Rosemary Williams, whose house was being foreclosed, and we organized support for that, and then we helped her reoccupy her house when she got evicted. Additionally, we do oppressed nationality movement stuff, Black liberation movement, immigrants' rights struggles, and the Chicano movement. We have a deep connection to the Chicano and Black liberation struggle that I'll talk about later. And right now, we see the immigrants' rights struggle as a very significant upsurge that needs support and to be developed. And we do a lot of work in the immigrants' rights movement. So, additionally, anti-war, anti-intervention organizing, particularly Palestine, Colombia, the Philippines, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and RNC 2008 protests. In Minneapolis, we played a big leading role in that. So also, finally, the student movement, which I work in. We work in Students for a Democratic Society, which was reformed in 2006, and we're developing work in MECHA, the Chicano student movement. Recently, in October, we formed a national coalition to deal with the economic crisis called the Network to Fight for Economic Justice, which brings together a lot of these unions and poor people's movements and stuff like that together. Finally, new growth. Since the 1990s, our organization was in decline, as were most Marxist organizations. In 1999, when the Left Foundationists split, we lost about half of our members. And then, the next 6 years we were stable with some slow growth. In the past few years, we've seen a big increase in growth, particularly among students, but also amongst the working class. So since 2005, growth is faster than any time since the group was founded. We've doubled in size of 3 years ago. We have collective work in 8 cities and a presence, some form of presence in just as many other cities. So in a lot of these new places, we're recruiting among students, but also from the working class, and mostly oppressed nationality activists that we're bringing in cities where we have veteran comrades and long-standing organization. The majority of our groups are working class. So another thing, an unorthodox thing we did is we've started recruiting members, which are the basis of our organization is cadres, which are basically full-time organizers. We've started recruiting members who all they have to do is agree with our unity documents, which are back there on the table, pay us $20 and agree to help with events and fight back distribution and stuff like that. So it's a way of expanding our base amongst people who, for whatever reason in their life, can't commit to organizing full-time. So, and where we've managed to put that together, people are enthusiastic, and it's really good. So, on to the theory. Our basic ideological framework is Marxism-Leninism and proletarian internationalism. We uphold Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao, and we study their works as well as the works of others like Fidel Castro, Ho Chi Minh, and Malcolm X, and others. As I said, the 1999 Declaration of the International Communist Seminar is important to us, and it's back on the table too, because it sums up some of the history of the communist movement and draws some principles from the lessons that were learned from that. So for us, we see the central task of Marxist-Leninists as party building. We say there's no vanguard Marxist-Leninist party in the United States. There used to be. The Communist Party held that position from the 20s to the 1950s until it was degenerated by revisionism, until now it's a reformist organization. There's still, probably good Marxist-Leninists in that organization, but it's as an organization, it's hopeless. So in the 1970s, the new communist movement made some attempts at party building. In the 70s, it made left errors. Many organizations were formed. They said they were the party, and the other organizations that were formed also said they were the party, and they didn't get along, couldn't work together, and sectarianism drove it apart. In the 80s and 90s, you had groups like the League of Revolutionary Struggle that made big inroads in mass work, but ended up selling out their organizations and joining the Democratic Party. It's a sad thing. Our organization, despite, we're not a party, we're a pre-party organization, but we're based on democratic centralism, meaning that we have an organizational structure, a hierarchy, and we have democracy with centralized guidance. So, along with that, it should be stressed that we see that there's a relationship between a party or a democratic centralist organization and mass movements, and that a Marxist-Leninist organization, which is required to have a revolution, in our opinion, requires a high level of unity to be a part of theoretical unity, of historical understanding, and all that stuff. But it requires millions and millions of people to have a revolution, which means a Marxist-Leninist organization has to broaden what it takes to do work and unite with others who don't agree with it. So that's our idea of a united front and working in and with mass organizations. So for us, the key to party building is winning the advance to Marxism-Leninism. That is the fusion of Marxism with the working class movement. And basically that means, in a lot of our work, working class people on the whole aren't Marxists. The working class movement isn't led by Marxists, and that all has to change, which means we have to work within those movements and win over the leaders and everybody else to revolutionary politics, especially Marxism. So it's important to note that we see an important role for students, and as we see it, communists should work among students for three main reasons. One, in and of themselves, the student movement can strike blows against the U.S. ruling class. Two, the activity of the student movement can spread advanced ideas to society as a whole. We see this with the Revolutionary Student Union and its videos on YouTube, good stuff. And three, advanced students can take up Marxism-Leninism and join the struggles of the working class and transform themselves into workers. Our basic organizing orientation is the mass line, which is a concept that was developed by Mao Zedong in the Chinese Revolution. And generally the phrase that you hear for this is from the masses to the masses, which is the short way of saying that communists should take the advanced ideas that are coming from the masses, concentrate them through revolutionary theory, refine what's correct in them, and bring them back to the masses to carry forward struggles. So that means organizing people around their immediate demands, but towards with a Marxist analysis of what's necessary and towards revolutionary goals. So this means that we have to look at the general, and there's a point about uniting the general with the particular. So the idea is that through particular struggles, the way people learn best is through struggle and participation. So you have to relate the general lessons that we want to draw about the system to the particular struggles and particular experiences in people's lives. So if we involve ourselves in a mass struggle over particular immediate demands, we sum that up, draw general lessons from it, bring that back to people, and raise people's consciousness. The last point about the mass line is Mao analyzes that there's an advanced, an intermediate, and a backwards element in everything. So you take any organization, and there's or a mass movement or whatever, and there's a group of advanced people that have ideas, they're receptive to Marxism and revolutionary politics, and they're leading things forward, and they want to fight. Then you have a broader section of the intermediate, and it's sort of just like your passive participants or whatever. Then you have the backwards who are holding things back. They're the Glenn Becks and Tea Partiers of the world. So, the idea of the mass line is that you focus your energy on locating the advanced, organizing the advanced, bringing correct ideas to the advanced, and then the advanced bring those ideas to the intermediate, and you mobilize large portions of people in struggles. And you isolate the backwards. So for us, as I said before, with the United Front, the core of that's the strategic alliance with oppressed nationalities. And for us, we see this is a particular thing about our organization that dates back to the Comintern, but we see there are two, or really three, oppressed nations within the borders of the U.S. that have a right to self-determination. And that is the African-American nation in the Black Belt South, the Chicano nation in the Southwest, and the Hawaiian nation. So Stalin in Marxism and the National Question gives a Marxist definition that Lenin accepted and said was the correct Leninist definition of a nation. That's that a nation is a historically constituted, stable community of people formed on the basis of the common possession of four principal characteristics, namely common language, common territory, common economic life, common psychological makeup, manifested in common specific features of national culture. So based on these objective criteria, we say that these nations exist, they're oppressed by imperialism, and they deserve self-determination, that is, the right to determine their own destiny, political, economic, social, and to develop fully in that way. We also say that the colonies of the U.S., Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, deserve full independence. So in our work in the unions, our theory is class struggle unionism. So based on ideas that were developed mostly by William Z. Foster, but we've developed past that own experiences, we say that a lot of the unions in this country are not interested in class struggle. They're interested in class collaboration. They want to work together with the bosses. They have an idea of like business unionism, or that the bosses and the workers share similar interests, and our view is that they don't. They have nothing in common. So we say that the unions have to be transformed into organizations of class struggle. And the way to do this is to locate the advanced, or what Foster called the militant minority, and lead struggles against the boss, even if the union bureaucrats don't want to, by mobilizing and organizing the rank and file. And that's what we do. That's it in a nutshell. That's Freedom Road's history and theory, and I would be happy to get into any of those points in more depth in Q&A and discussion.
What particular concerns does your organization have to do in terms of trying to resist economism, as laid out by somebody like Lenin? Like, what concerns do you have? Like, oh, we don't need to do that, we shouldn't do this because it would be economism.
I think that gets sort of into, back to the points. Let's see. I was talking about, our sort of, there it is. We have the three strategic objectives. If all we were trying to do was win all that could be won for the people and harm the enemy, then I think that would be economism. But we say that that's not enough. That's not going to do it. We have to raise the level of consciousness, organization, and struggle of mass organizations as well. And the most important part is what we see as the central task of an organization is winning the advance to Marxism-Leninism, building an organization for revolution. In my opinion, that's fundamentally different than economism, which says we need to build the economic struggle, and the political struggle is nothing.
For those that missed your talk earlier today about the struggle for students' rights, how do you think students directly fight against the bourgeois?
The main way is through, the education rights struggle is big. If you have students in 39 states on 100 campuses, hundreds of thousands of students in the street fighting back against privatization of the universities, or fighting against cutbacks and tuition hikes, students are overwhelmingly come from the petty bourgeoisie, but they're fighting against the monopoly capitalists who are taking over their schools. That's good, and it's important and valuable. Overall, students eventually need to, when they graduate, they need to transform themselves and enter the working class and become a part of the class struggle.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had involvement, again, with the student struggles, but also with the RNC last year. But I mean, these are sort of, I don't quite want to call it United Front. I mean, obviously it's a United Front in a sense, but getting into like the actual politics of like, say, the insurrectionary anarchists who are like, yes, let's burn all the dumpsters in town and that'll show them. Like, how do you sort of mitigate that in a mass movement? Or how does the FRSO deal with that aspect?
So in the RNC stuff, you know, I wasn't one of the direct organizers of that, but I'm aware of what happened. You know, it happened in St. Paul, right? So we put forward a set of principles called the St. Paul Principles, and said that anybody that will work within this framework, we want to work with them and do that. And everybody agreed to it. The RNC Welcoming Committee, other anarchists agreed to it. And basically it was that we respect the diversity of tactics. And anybody that wants to organize anything is welcome to do so, as long as there's a separation of time and space. You know, because if we're going to build a march that includes immigrants who don't want to be deported, there needs to be a separation of time and space between them and the people that want to break windows. You know. So those were there was another one that I can't remember, but those are the basic principles, and the idea is that you have to be clear and upfront and define things, and you can work together with people. And so then, you know, of course, the anarchists got attacked pretty severely and were repressed, and you know, people wanted us to denounce them, and we wouldn't do it. You know, what they did, they chose to do. They abided by the St. Paul Principles, and great.
You made the comment that, you know, once students graduate from college and they, you know, again, rather than going on to corporate jobs and just trying to make a lot of money, instead they should, you know, become part of the working class. Could you say more about, in I guess, more specifics about how a student who's recently graduated might do that, or what you have in mind when you say that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the idea is we're trying to build a party of the working class, not a party for the working class, but a party of workers, right? That's directly involved in the class struggle. So, you know, part of what we do is, you know, students should go get jobs at UPS. You know, take UPS for example. All the UPS centers in the world practically are organized by the Teamsters. And within the Teamsters, you know, there's a lot of corruption, but there's also a vibrant rank and file movement of the Teamsters for a Democratic Union that people could participate in. And, you know, so well, that would be one concrete example. Maybe there are other examples in different places where different unions make more sense, but, you know, the idea is simple. You know, students shouldn't go on and become lawyers and doctors or whatever. They shouldn't abandon their class, or if they come from a different class, they should transform their class and enter the working class and fight as workers.
I have a concern that I think is linked. You said that the FRSO is not a party, but it's a pre-party organization. And it seemed to be connected to your analysis of the mass line, which is there are three, right? There's the vanguard, the most advanced elements, the intermediate, and the rear guard. And you said, right, that the most advanced elements then get the intermediate to mobilize.
Yeah.
So in this case, because the FRSO is a pre-party organization, then is the goal then to get the most advanced elements to mobilize the intermediate, or is the current goal to simply get together the most advanced elements to find other more advanced elements so that at some time in the future they can mobilize the intermediate?
Pretty much the first one. So, you know, there's a fourth category, which is the conscious elements, which are the revolutionaries. You know, we are not the advanced. We see the advanced as people who want to fight and are receptive to revolutionary ideas. So we want to immediately discover through mass struggle, discover and identify the advanced, bring our ideas to them, support their advanced ideas, and allow those ideas and the struggle that we can bring forward out of that to broaden and build connections to the broader masses. You know. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
It might just be like a matter of semantics, but I'm not familiar with the term monopolizing capitalism, or monopolist.
Monopoly capitalism?
Yeah, monopoly capitalism. When you say that, do you think that capitalism innately monopolizes, or is it just, I mean...
Yeah, so that's a concept from Lenin. The idea is that as imperialism developed in the beginning of the 19th century, and big projects like railroads and stuff like that were on the order of the day, it became necessary to concentrate greater amounts of capital into smaller hands to fund these things. That was done through banking, and eventually that progressed to a point where banking capital on one hand and industrial capital on the other totally merged and formed finance capital and financial oligarchy. And the idea is that then in order to make massive amounts of money, these monopolies formed, and that it's the natural progression. We're not in, when Marx analyzed capitalism, it was early industrial competitive capitalism, and that has qualitatively changed into an imperialist world system that is also called monopoly capitalism.
So obviously, right, what it seems to me the FRSO's main directive is to get the actual party going, right? We need a vanguard party, we need to make working class struggles. Obviously, I know the whole story from Leninism, right? Once we get sufficient critical mass, right, we seize the state. Obviously, and again, I know you mentioned, right, you pulled Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin now, but is there actually a protocol that FRSO has in place, or is it sort of like, yeah, we need to build a party now, this is the first thing, and then assess the material conditions once we have the party and where that goes? Is it,
we have some ideas, but generally we see the seize the state stage of the revolution as being pretty far in the future, and that right now we're nowhere even close to building the party. We're working hard, but the Marxist-Leninist movement's been in decline since the early 90s, and we're trying to recover. I would say that if you want to compare and contrast, the Chinese Revolution on the one hand, protracted People's War, and then you have the Bolshevik Revolution on the other, which is mostly an urban struggle, insurrections followed by a civil war. I don't have a crystal ball, but I would think it would be the conditions in the U.S. are similar to the Bolshevik conditions, and revolutionary struggle to seize state power will probably be more similar to the Bolshevik experience than the Chinese.
but on that note, do you think there's a more important lesson that we learn from Mao as far as like sort of the actual seizing of the state stage, where again, like you assume more radical democracy and these sort of things? I mean, obviously at some point the state is necessary. Like most of us don't accept this, but right, for a revolution, the state's going to be necessary to actually be suppressing the other classes. But also, do you take the more lessons from Mao, where it's like, okay, but what we really need is radical democracy to be able to correct mistaken ideas and this sort of thing, rather than just sort of top-down bureaucracy? That's even a bad terminology for me. So let's go. Do it live.
That's not an easy question, but I think that the socialist countries, past, present, have all given us examples of what socialism means to be like, and we can learn from all of them. As for Mao, obviously, even Lenin said we need a lot more democracy, and the way we'll organize it is will be both locally, there will be local organizations of people's power, and there will be national organizations for planning and that kind of thing. And that will be a mixed combination of those things. And I don't know how to say exactly how it'll pan out, but
what are the dangers that you see are possible in creating unified fronts and minimal programs and things like that? Because when you evaluate more modern outbreaks of Maoism and things like that, specifically think of Nepal, they tried this whole sort of parliamentary style of debate, like they declare peace and then they have the 7-party peace agreement, and now it seems like they're working together with unified Marxist-Leninists and the Nepali Congress and things like that to kind of push together a minimal program. Obviously they're out of power now and they're kind of in the countryside and things like that, and working their way in all sorts of significant ways. But it seems to me like unified front and minimal programs can sometimes be useful and sometimes not be useful and actually be detrimental. What do you see the FSR doing to avoid some of those pitfalls?
the FRSO. I think that the struggle in Nepal is very complex. I'm not going to say that the comrades there are on the wrong path, but I don't think we would take a parliamentary road at any point. Obviously, the risk of the United Front is if you lose your independence and your initiative, you Marxist-Leninists or working class people abdicate leadership to the bourgeoisie or the other classes that you're united with. If you give up, Marxist-Leninist leadership, if you give up leadership of the party in the United Front, you're screwed. That's the danger. And the only way to prevent it is to not do that.
So would the United Front programs best be organized, according to you, like under specific your leadership, and then other people that want to join in, but not to be?
I think the National Democratic Front of the Philippines is like a clear example.
Could you go more into that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just drinking some water. The National Democratic Front of the Philippines is an organization that involves dozens of revolutionary-oriented organizations from different Christian groups, national, minority nationality groups within the Philippines, and all kinds of women's organizations, trade unions, all kinds of stuff. And they all participate in the National Democratic Front, which is overtly led by the Communist Party of the Philippines. The other organization that participates in the United Front is the New People's Army. Mao said that you have to have, to win a revolution, you have to have 3 magic weapons. And those are the party, the United Front, and armed struggle. And if you use all 3 of them correctly together, you can win. But if you use any one of them incorrectly or abandon any one of them, you can't.
I guess you mentioned that recently the growth is, since 2005, the growth has been a lot quicker. What kind of numbers, or how many people are in your organization? And then secondly, you mentioned that there are cadres who are, working full-time organizing. I'm curious how, if those people also have side jobs, or whether they're able to get funding from the party, and if so, where that funding comes from to be able to support some people who work full-time.
So, not to sound weird, but as a matter of organizational security, there's a number of things that I'm not going to talk about, and all of those things are things that I'm not going to talk about.
what conditions do you think might have influenced the growth of the FRSO?
You know, the economic crisis played a big role. The upsurge in the immigrant rights movement played a big role, and you know, the growing anti-war movement until recently played a significant role. You know, mass struggles produce fruit, and Freedom Road has attempted to you know, get some of that successfully. And at this point, it's just like, you know, a rolling snowball.
I guess I would ask, what other sort of, like, obviously FRSO is sort of its own thing with several involvement, but would you maybe speak to the sort of other organizations within the U.S. that you sort of align with here and there, just like, you know, sort of United Fronts here and there?
You know, we work along with the Answer Coalition, which is you know, the Party for Socialism and Liberation helps to lead. We work with the Workers' World Party. There are other groups that we you know, are able to work with sometimes. You know, generally, our idea of unity is that you know, we're looking to build a new party, which is also going to mean mergers, and we'll you know, if we can unite, it has to be on a basis of Marxism-Leninism and proletarian internationalism. It has to be based on principles. And if people want to do that, we'll do it. And you know, if they don't want to do that, if people are willing to unite on practical programs, on real work, we'll do that too, in like a practical way, not organizationally. But we can do a lot of work together. Like in the RNC struggle, you know, we built a coalition that included all the national anti-war coalitions, the Answer Coalition, the Troops Out Now Coalition, and the United for Peace and Justice. And those three coalitions hadn't met together in the same room for years. You know? So if we can get groups together around practical struggles, we're happy to do it with anybody.
You guys coming up with Salt Lake if we get big RNC here?
Yeah.
You want to ask about your stance on the struggles?
Oh, how come when you mentioned the national liberation struggles kind of within the United States, how come Native Americans were included in that list?
So with Native Americans, we support you know, full self-determination for the Native Americans to the extent that they haven't been wiped out. You know, so you know, we support the recognition of all the treaties that exist, full land rights to Native Americans, and all those things. But you know, the national question in the United States is very complex. You know, so you know, for hundreds of years, the African American people under slavery built up their own economy and culture and all this stuff in the South that was distinct from the various African peoples that were brought here. You know, it's something new. And you know, our view is that very, very unfortunately, the Native American people were brutally murdered, and genocide was waged against them, and they were forced onto these reservations. The reservations exist within the area that we would consider the African American national territory. So all this stuff is like very complicated, and a revolutionary struggle is going to have to sort this out. And you know, our view is that you know, the interests of the multinational working class has to come primarily before the national interests of any of these individual groups. So you know, the revolutionary power will have to find some way of resolving the differences that exist between these national groups, and finding ways, whether it's some kind of federation or autonomous regions or whatever, to find a way where all these oppressed peoples can you know, develop and have self-determination.
Scratching your chin for a question.
No, just scratching.
Got there really loud. Anyone has any other questions?
As far as like organizing and things like that go, what's kind of the day-to-day like? I mean, I'm sensing, I guess I knew a little bit more about you in advance. I'm sorry, that's my bad for not talking to these guys more yet about that, but what's like the day-to-day life in terms of the organizing work that you do, and just to get like a practical perspective on?
Well, so it totally depends on what people are doing. Most of it would be, we would attend meetings for the mass organizations that we participate in. Try to like help organize and build those mass struggles, whether they're union struggles or anti-war struggles or whatever. And all the ins and outs of that will take up a significant amount of time. Then, the basic form of organization is units that exist concentrated in different areas of work. And those units will meet to kind of sum things up and use Marxism to analyze the problems that are going on, see how we need to move things forward, and bring that back to the mass organizations and try to sort that stuff out. So, the day-to-day organizing is the nuts and bolts of organizing. It's doing room reservations if you're a student, and flyering and talking to people, getting people together for protests, marches, and maybe you're going to have a building occupation. And then when the struggle is over or at a critical point, you have to find a way to sum things up and draw correct lessons and conclusions from it based on Marxism, and analyze how to move things forward, how to consolidate gains, and all that stuff. I think your question was a little broad and difficult to answer, but I hope that helps.
I mean, you answered pretty well.
Yeah.
What do you think are the benefits and also the limits of protests as action?
Well, obviously, if we say we're going to have an anti-war protest to stop the war, it's not going to stop the war that day. But the benefits are that there are a whole wide array of things to do to bring people forward in the struggles, and through that process raise people's consciousness and build movements. The main thing is to build campaigns that have targets and goals, and protests are a part of those campaigns in most cases. But as an end in themselves, it's not it. But I think they're very important and valuable for moving people forward.
Sorry, just follow up on that. How do you see, either historically or just current, or theoretically, how protests concretely move people forward, or would it be just different for different people?
Yeah, it's different for different types of struggles. If you're talking about a union struggle, then for example, it's in some workplace, you'll have an issue where the boss is cutting people's pay or whatever, and the workers want to fight, and the union officials don't, and so you might organize the rank and file to protest outside of the union office. And it's important because it puts heat on the union official, and who's depending on these people for dues. He doesn't want the union to decertify, and he doesn't want to be called a sellout in front of everybody. So maybe when the union officials over to helping fight this battle, which is good, anybody can fight the boss we want to fight with, and maybe don't, and in which case you're able to draw lessons with people about who your friends and enemies are, and what the limits of these conditions are, and that kind of thing. So protests are important as like a learning process. people learn through experience, through practice, and it's one of the main ways that you're going to draw lots of people into these experiences together.
In the list of people that you mentioned in terms of holding them in high regard, Lenin, Mao, Stalin, etc., what kind of effect does that have on maybe recruiting to kind of openly acknowledge, which obviously should be open about everything, I guess, but to openly acknowledge, say, having a respect for Stalin, for example, who is just in terms of the U.S. population broadly considered usually a pretty rotten guy. What type of effect would that have on recruiting, for example, or does that not even really come up? Or
sure, it comes up. The thing is, recruitment's not just, we're not just an organization that you can just join if you want to. There would be a process that would be involved, and we'd have to sort out our unity and differences. And there are larger organizations in the world and in this country that have much easier ideas to unite with than we do. And that's what I'm talking about. We have to, it's not just our organization that can carry forward the revolution, it's the masses that make history. And so we have to work with people on a broader unity to fight against the capitalist class than it takes to join our organization and to be a revolutionary Marxist-Leninist. So, if someone wanted to join our group and they didn't like Stalin or Mao, I think that if that person's not going anywhere, we can probably talk about it and sort it out and work out the why and the why not.
I guess this will be sort of a cluster question, but do you see, does the FRSO kind of view capitalism as sort of staying in this sort of phase, or do you think it's progressing in any sort of other phases, or does the question make sense, really? Or is it sort of just like, yes, we accept the current conditions of what capitalism is, or do you think, I think especially with things like ecological crisis or other crises, or do you think, obviously the financial crisis is somewhat stabilized, but even then it's still shaky as well as it could. It's obviously going to still keep happening. But
So capitalism goes through periodic crises, and that changes things during those periods, changes conditions. We view imperialism on a whole as being a general crisis. It's social, political, and economic. It's losing credibility around the world as movements for socialism and national liberation gain ground. We don't think there's any sort of new stage beyond the stage of imperialism and proletarian revolution. We think there's not a qualitative difference between imperialism now and imperialism when Lenin wrote his book about it. But that's not to say that there aren't, concrete changes and basic conditions for people. Does that answer your question? Is that what you're getting at?
yeah, obviously it kind of gets into, I guess we'll turn the discussion to this then. We were talking about this earlier, the sort of definition of emotional leftism getting too far ahead of actual, concrete struggles, right? Getting into theoretical. And again, one of the popular notions that for some god-awful reason, like Carnegie like to take up are struggles over intellectual property, struggles over other sort of things, or even Zizek points out, oh yeah, it's now proletarianization of genetic codes, of ecology, of other sort of things that more and more people are excluded from. So do you think these are just sort of deviationist notions, or should we just be focusing on actual worker struggles, demands of workers, and then building a party out of that?
I think that if we're going to build a working class party, the way we're going to build it is out of the class struggle. But we also need to work with oppressed nationalities who their struggles are national liberation struggles that involve multiple classes, and we can unite with other classes as well. So it's not like a pure proletarian revolution kind of Trotskyist view. We think that we have a document as part of our program which we're developing called Class in the U.S. and Our Strategy for Revolution. It's back there on the table, so you should read it. But it gives a class analysis of the United States and says where we should concentrate our forces and that kind of thing. And basically, yeah, we need to work in within the working class, particularly the lower sections of the working class, where conditions are the worst and most difficult. We need to work amongst organized workers because the unions are there and they're powerful instruments of class struggle if they are transformed into them. We also need to organize unorganized people, and we need to build work in movements of oppressed nationalities and develop that as part of building a strategic alliance. But, you know, again, that's not all that we do. We do anti-war organizing, community organizing, stuff like that. You know, we have relations with other parties in other countries, like the Workers' Party of Belgium, the Communist Party of the Philippines, Maoists in Nepal or India, the FARC in Colombia, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, and we want to give solidarity to those struggles, and that means struggles to end U.S. imperialism and U.S. intervention in those countries, and that's another big part of what we do.
So then I guess personally, though, do you consider these sort of like more like theoretical, like things, getting too far ahead of these sort of struggles? They don't necessarily apply to like, okay, but how can we apply this to actual concrete worker struggles now? Do you consider that a bad deviation into the working class? Or
I mean, I think that I'm not opposed to theory for theory's sake or studying that kind of thing, but I think that revolutionaries need to prioritize their time and deal with mostly with stuff that they're gonna find useful towards party building. I haven't read Hart and Eggery really, so I can't really comment on that.
yeah, you're honestly
I don't think I really was.
I mean, it seems to me like, at least in the United States, in comparison to a lot of these places where communism is springing up and being organized and actually doing things, the United States would be, in a lot of people's ideas, the last place where this would happen. And I think, obviously, the working poor, as opposed to just workers and middle class and things like that, I think that we face kind of a different sort of challenge of organization. If it can happen here, it has to happen. It seems like a very different way because we have a huge middle class here. We have lots of gated communities, and by gated communities, I don't mean physically gated communities, but I mean like populations of workers isolated. I mean, we're at least on an international sense, we're all the labor aristocracy here. So. Is the idea is that we try to maybe educate or convert some of these people that are more in the middle and try to get them to, empathize with this? Or is it more like, okay, let's get the people that are empathetic with us now and try to organize them? Or like
our view isn't like third worldist. We don't have a view that the working class in this country is sold out and no good, and that we have to rely on revolutions in other countries to overthrow U.S. imperialism. We think they're doing that, and it's great, but U.S. imperialism is our monster to slay. So our view is that if people are fighting against U.S. imperialism objectively, we want to unite with that and try to build working class leadership within those struggles based on the class interests of working people. Again, we work in a whole series of trade unions, and we found a lot of success there. I'm talking about unions that are, we have unions with clerical workers, we have unions with janitors and hospital workers and small manufacturing that we work in and try to help set on the basis of class struggle. I don't know if that is answering your question, but
partially. It seems to me like the answer you're giving me is something along the lines of, well, whoever will take us, that's who we're going to try to organize. Is that?
No. We're going to try to mainly focus on organizing people that are geared up and ready to fight, you know, we're going to organize amongst the advanced. You know, we're going to have a strategic orientation within that and prioritize one thing over another. You know, we might say it's better to work in UPS amongst workers and Teamsters because, you know, like what the 1997 UPS strike proved is that the working amongst warehouse and transportation is situated on the choking points of the economy, and to organize those workers to fight can have rippling effects that course through all of society. So we're going to try to look at things strategically, but you know, we're also going to try to make all the gains that we can wherever we can within a set strategic framework and a set of priorities that we have.
Okay.
So you guys want to ask any questions? Any discussions? Disagreements? Do you have any concluding thoughts? Advice for the RSU?
You know, just this. You know, if I think that your group, the Revolutionary Student Union, is good. I've enjoyed the videos that you post and stuff like that, and I've tried to spread those around and share them with people. I think that you know, we need a communist party, and if you're interested in Marxism-Leninism and building a party like that, you should talk to me, and you should talk to us, and you should talk about getting with us. You know, if you have any questions that maybe we'll talk about that we can't talk about now, maybe we can talk about another time, I'd be happy to do that. So, thank you very much for your attention. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I hope I see you again soon.
Thank you.